My friends, my factivists, welcome to another Facts Me Live. It is Saturday, the day before Easter. And before we get into anything this morning, I just want to take a moment, in just a moment, my friends, to recognize what we've built, what we have built here in just 6 months' time, because this didn't happen by accident. This didn't come from corporate backing, media partnerships, or some polished machine behind the curtain. Nope, just regular old Gen X working class, me and you. And that's great. You know, this came from you guys. I am here because of you. And I know I just keep saying it, and I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but you guys are so appreciated. So appreciated. You know, it Facts Me and everybody that's sitting here today, this came from, you know, it came from people who were tired of being talked at, you know, and actually want to think and speak for themselves. It came from people who said, no, I'm not going to outsource my brain to headlines, influencers, or viral clips. I want evidence. I want truth. I want reality. That's why you're here. And that's why I love you guys so much. And over time, something incredible has happened. We haven't just grown a page. We are building a movement. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it across social media. People are saying, you've got to check out Facts Me. You've got to go over to Facts Me's page. You know, guys, this is just amazing that we are making such a difference. And yes, it isn't me. It is all of us. And this is a movement of people who understand that feelings are not facts. You know, you hear us conservatives say that all the time. And narratives are not evidence. And that truth, it does not bend just because it's inconvenient, right? So that's what Facts Me is, guys. And I've watched this thing evolve from just putting content out there to strong conversations, to debates, to what you're seeing right here. A live platform where truth gets put on trial in real time, right? And I'll tell you right now, guys, this is just the beginning, because what's coming next is bigger. I'm expanding to the People's Panel. Most of you have seen this. I'm going to be bringing you onto the show each week. Once or twice a week, I'm going to have factivists like you on the show just to talk, have normal, great conversations, debates, spitball ideas. So we're bringing more of you guys onto this show to agree, disagree, don't care. If you've got facts, you've got a seat, my friends. So we're building out Facts Me TV, longer form, deeper dives, structured breakdowns. See, people are just racing to get here. And you know, that just only scratches the surface, because we dismantle narratives piece by piece here, and we're having a great time doing it. And most importantly, we're continuing to raise that standard. That's right. People should expect more out of people like me, out of other commentators, out of influencers. Expect more, man. Expect that honesty. Demand it, because standards matter. And if there's one thing that this community has proven, it's that people are hungry for it. People want it. They are hungry for clarity in a world that is addicted to confusion. Absolutely addicted. It's like a Stockholm syndrome. I swear. They're, you know, everybody is hungry for truth in a system that literally profits off distortion. And we're going to be covering that today with an interesting clip from Candace Owens that I doubt many of you have ever seen. And, you know, when somebody is that hungry for the truth, you know, they finally stand up and they say, no, bring me the evidence, or don't bring me anything at all. You guys have seen me make this comment on the trolls, on all up and down the Facts Me page. Either bring the evidence, show that you're right, or just shut up. You know? Now, with that being said, let's get to this morning's show. We've got a lot to unpack here, guys, a lot to break down, and none of it is small. This is great stuff. And I'm really excited about this first segment, guys. We're diving into what is being described, and I would describe that too. I back this description. More damning evidence in the Tyler Robinson case. And we're not doing what the internet does. We're not speculating. We're not, creating crazy theories, and we're certainly not chasing shadows, my friends. We're going to look at what is actually being presented, what's verified, what's being claimed, and what it means in the real world, not in comment sections, not on YouTube, right? Because there's a difference between a narrative and a case that's being built. And this morning we are separating the two, and this is great. I doubt many of you have even heard this yet, so you're hearing it for the first time. Actually, most of what I'm covering this morning, I think you're going to say, hey, I haven't heard any of that. Okay, and that's what we're aiming for here. So we're addressing something that, quite frankly, should wake a lot of people up. Okay, Candace Owens, whether people want to admit it or not, which the not part I'll never understand, she has stepped into a territory where the line between commentary and grifting is no longer blurry at all. It's visible. And when someone starts revealing directly or indirectly that manipulating narratives, exaggerating claims, or pushing unverified conclusions is a part of the strategy, that's not commentary anymore, my friends. It's a business model. And we're going to break that down today with this rather exciting clip from Candace that was unearthed, because there's so much out there to unearth. You guys are going to love it. And not emotionally, not politically, but factually. Because if your entire brand is built on questioning everything, then you better be ready when someone questions you. And finally, we're going to ask the question that more and more people on both sides are starting to ask. Just how insane is Tucker Carlson? Today you're going to find out. And I don't mean that as a cheap shot. Maybe a little bit. But I mean this as an analytical breakdown, okay? You guys are going to love this shit. So stick around. We're just getting started, because there is a difference between asking hard questions and constructing narratives that detach from reality, okay? There's a difference between skepticism and performative conspiracy thinking. And when someone has the reach that Tucker has, those distinctions matter, because influence without accountability is dangerous. All right. That sums the left up. No accountability, the most dangerous group on the planet. So tonight we're going to put it all out on the table. I don't know why I said tonight. Well, I guess it's nighttime somewhere, right? I mean, in the UK, it's about 2:00. So that's not night. It's probably like in China. I don't know. But no shortcuts, no sacred cows, no narrative protection here, guys. Just facts, because that's what we do here. This isn't about the left versus right. This isn't about who you like or who you follow. This is about one thing and one thing only. What can be proven, come what may. So if you're here for that, if you're here for the real conversation, real breakdowns, and real accountability, you're in the right place. So if you're joining me for the first time, guess what? You'll be back. So let's get to work. This is great, guys. Let's jump on this new evidence against Tyler Robinson. As if he wasn't already damned, he is damned. Okay? We've all talked about this little bullet fragmenting nonsense and all that stuff, and how really, in the grand scheme of things, how irrelevant that actually is. But the forensic pathologist pulled fragments out of Kirk's body, okay? Not an intact bullet. That matters, but not in the way the internet philosophers want it to, okay? You'll hear people say, well, if they can't match the bullet, the whole case falls apart. We talked about this yesterday. But that's not how real world investigations or real world prosecutions actually work, my friends. That's how movie scripts work. Because in the real world, evidence is not a single bullet Okay. It's a convergence of independent truths that all point in the same direction. And when those truths converge, narratives collapse, like everything Candace Owens says. So let's talk about what's been confirmed. Okay. The testing did positively confirm, and this is so great, guys. This is like lock and stock. The testing did positively confirm that the spent shell casing found at the scene matched Tyler Robinson's weapon. Okay? So you've got this side of the internet saying, well, because of the bullet fragmentation, they can't determine that the bullet actually came from Tyler's rifle, right? The 30-06. But they have confirmed that the spent shell casing, and for those of you who don't know what that means, the shell casing is what's left. Okay, you've got the shell. Inside the shell is the powder. And then there's a primer back here. And then you've got the bullet tip that actually slides into the shell, right? So when you pull that trigger, you hit the primer, that sends off a spark or a burst that ignites all of that gunpowder and then fires the bullet out of the shell casing. The shell casing remains. And then, of course, you eject the shell casing. That's what was found. That's what matched 30-06. So even though this part exploded upon impact, we still have this part, the origin of that bullet. So you've got the origin of the bullet in the shell casing, which the shell casing's origin was the 30-06. That has been positively matched. That's right. Say it again slowly and let it register. That's not a theory. That's not a vibe. That's not it looks similar. A confirmed match between the casing at the scene and the 30-06. Tyler Robinson is toast. So there you guys go. This is not a side note. This is not background noise. This is core evidence. Core evidence. You just saw it. The three parts of this. You have the rifle, the bullet, the shell casing, all of that goes into said rifle. Firing pin hits primer, ignites gunpowder, shoots bullet out. This is still left. This matched the gun, which means this matches the bullet. See how that works? Because here's what people either don't understand or pretend not to understand about firearms, especially firearm forensics. When a gun is fired, it leaves behind a mechanical fingerprint. The firing pin strikes the primer, like I said. The extractor and ejector engage the casing. The chamber leaves microscopic impressions. These are not random. These are not guesswork. It's like DNA, so to speak. These are repeatable, testable, and used in court across the country every single day. So when you hear the spent shell casing match the weapon, what you're actually hearing is this. The gun that investigators recovered has already been tied mechanically, physically, and empirically to the moment the shot was fired. That places the weapon at the scene, period, the end, full stop. Tyler Robinson is cooked. And now ask yourself the question that matters in a courtroom, not on social media. If the weapon is at the scene and the weapon is tied to the defendant, what exactly do you think the defense is supposed to do with that? Because this is where fantasy ends and the law begins. People want to hang everything on bullet fragments because that's all they got. In their mind, they're totally against Tyler Robinson being the killer. So they're just hanging on to this bullet fragment thing. Well, if they can't match the bullet, then nothing is proven, right? That's not just wrong. It's embarrassingly wrong. Bullet fragmentation is common, like we talked about yesterday, especially depending on the type of round, the velocity, the impact dynamics. When a bullet breaks apart, you often lose the clean striations needed for a classic comparison. That's not suspicious. That's physics. Because here's the part that absolutely dismantles the narrative. You don't need the bullet match if you already have the casing match. There it is. You do not need the bullet match if you already have the casing match, and now we have the casing match. Tyler Robinson is cooked. Let me say that again for the people still clinging on to this internet mythology. You do not need a pristine bullet to establish a firearm used if the casing already ties to the firearm to the shot. And that has been done. Did you hear that here first? Please tell me in the comments if you heard that here first. That would just make my day. Because the casing is ejected the moment of firing. It is the byproduct of that exact event. It is not secondary. It is not optional. It is a direct artifact of the gun being fired. So when that casing is matched to a specific weapon, you have effectively anchored that weapon to the act itself. Again, this is the real world. That's why the statement matters. That's what is being said, and I quote, that's a pretty significant piece of evidence for the prosecution, and it's really damning for the defense. Because it is. It 100% ties the gun to Tyler Robinson, to the bullet that actually killed Charlie Kirk. That's not hyperbole. That's understatement. Because in a courtroom, the prosecution doesn't need perfection. They need coherence. They need a chain that holds. And what you're looking at here is a chain that is not only holding, it is tightening, and it is strangling that mofo like there's no tomorrow. The defense now has a bigger problem. It is not a small one. They can't just wave this away. Well, the bullet was fragmented, guys. No. That doesn't undo the casing match. It doesn't relocate the weapon. It doesn't introduce reasonable doubt on its own. And all it does is remove one possible layer of evidence while leaving a far more direct one. I love it, man. I'm excited. This is great. We're going to see justice served. So now the burden shifts, not legally, but practically. The defense has to explain how a weapon tied to the defendant also happens to be the weapon that fired the casing at the scene. That's not a gap. That's a freaking canyon, guys. And this is where the narrative versus reality, where that divide becomes crystal clear. The narrative says no bullet match, no casing. You know what was Candace's big thing the other day? You have to, I don't know, she was alluding to the fact that now they have to throw the rifle out of the case and all this stuff. She could not be further from the truth. She is so wrong and uneducated on this stuff. Reality says, Candace, the casing matched the gun. The gun is tied to the suspect. The shot was fired. Connect the dots. Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? Nah, I'll do it for you. How about that? One is a slogan, Candace. The other is a prosecutable structure, which is where we're at in reality. And if you think juries are sitting there going, well, I just feel like something's off. You never paid attention to how verdicts are, Jurors are instructed to weigh evidence, real, tangible, testable evidence. And a casing to weapon match is exactly that. It's not speculation. It's not interpretation. It is a demonstrable linkage that nobody can deny. So when people try to downplay this, what they're really doing, whether they realize it or not, is attempting to elevate the absence of one form of evidence over the presence of another, stronger one. So it's backwards. That's like ignoring fingerprints on a weapon because you didn't get a clear shoe print at the scene. You see what I'm getting at? And in a courtroom, it gets dismantled in about 5 minutes, guys. This is why the prosecution views this as very significant, because it is. The shell casing matched. This is why it's so damning for the defense, because it forces them into a corner where explanation becomes nearly impossible without introducing even more implausibility. That's reality. And this is why the broader conversation needs to evolve past internet grade analysis and into something resembling adult reasoning. You know how there's like B movies and then there's, the A movies, whatever you want to call it. Candace is kind of like the B movie of the internet. You know what I'm saying? She's got the budget, but it's bad acting and you get it. Anyway, evidence is cumulative. Okay. Cases are built in layers. And when one of those layers is confirmed, when one of those layers is a confirmed mechanical match between a casing and a weapon tied to a suspect, you're no longer in the realm of maybe, kids. You're in the realm of accountability. This is a huge win for Team Charlie, guys. Let's freaking hear it. So no, the fragmented bullet does not save the narrative. It doesn't even weaken the case in any way. And there's no need to even pretend it does, because that's just pointless. Because the moment that casing matched the weapon, the case stopped being about what's missing and it started being about what's already been proven. There is a moment, moving on from that, every once in a while, when a mask slips. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, but just enough for those paying attention to realize they weren't watching the truth. They were watching performance. And if this resurfaced clip is accurate in its implication, if Candace Owens is openly acknowledging that deception, exaggeration, or strategic dishonesty is effective online, then what you are witnessing is not a mistake. It's a confession of methodology. Because let's be very clear about something. The internet does not reward truth. It rewards engagement. That is just the reality of it. And engagement is not driven by accuracy. It is driven by emotion, outrage, shock, tribal validation. Oh my God, the tribal validation. The more provocative the claim, the faster it spreads, the less grounded it is in reality, the less friction it encounters from people who want to believe it. So when someone admits that bending or abandoning truth is the way to go, what they are really saying is this: I understand the algorithm better than I respect the truth. And once you understand that, everything else starts to make sense, because now you're not evaluating statements as isolated claims. You're evaluating a pattern. A pattern where assertions are made first, evidence is optional, corrections never arrive, and the narrative simply moves on. Who does that sound like? That is not analysis. That is not journalism. That is not even commentary. That is content farming built on distortion. Now let's talk about why this matters, because this is where people get lazy. They treat this like it's internet drama. It's not. When someone builds an audience in the millions, whether that audience was bought, it's bots, it doesn't matter. That number's there. That number sets an example. That number sets the perception, right? They monetize that audience and then feeds that audience information that is exaggerated, misleading, false. The consequences aren't contained to a comment section, guys. Then that bleeds out into the real world. They shape perception. They shape belief. They shape how people understand reality. And if your underlining philosophy is that truth is secondary to reach, then you are not informing an audience. You're manipulating one. Now, here's where it gets even more important. People defending this behavior will say, well, everyone exaggerates, or it's just commentary, or she's just asking questions. No. There is a difference between questioning and implying conclusions without evidence. I'm going to say that again. There's a difference between questioning and implying conclusions without evidence. There's a difference between commentary and narrative construction detached from verification. There's a difference between being wrong and never caring if you're right in the first place. And if the clip reflects what it appears to reflect, then we are no longer dealing with accidental misinformation. We are dealing with intentional strategy. Now let's connect that to observable behavior. Over the past 7 months, one of the most consistent criticisms, coming not just from the opponents, but from the neutral observers and even former supporters, is this. There is a pattern of bold claims with little to no verifiable backing, followed by constant pivoting when those claims fail to materialize. That is not a one-off. That is not bad luck. That is a system. You are watching a system operate. And systems reveal intent. Because if accuracy mattered, corrections would follow. If truth mattered, evidence would lead. If integrity mattered, accountability would exist. But when none of those things consistently show up, and yet the content keeps coming, the clicks keep coming, and the revenue keeps coming, you are forced to ask the only adult question left in the room. Is the goal to be right, or is the goal to be watched? And if the answer is to be watched, then truth becomes negotiable. That's danger. Not disagreement, not controversy, not even being wrong. The danger is when truth is no longer the standard. Because once that line is crossed, everything just becomes content. Facts become optional, context becomes irrelevant, and reality becomes whatever performs best on the screen. And here's the part that separates serious thinkers from followers. You don't need to hate someone to evaluate them. You don't need to agree with someone to demand evidence. And you certainly don't need to pick a side to recognize a pattern. All you need is one standard, and that standard lives firmly here at FactsMe. Show me verifiable, empirical, real-world evidence. Not vibes, not implications, or not I just know. Because the moment you abandon that standard, you are no longer consuming information. You are consuming entertainment disguised as truth. And if this clip that I'm about to show you is genuine in what it suggests, which I think it is, my opinion, then what you are seeing is not just a moment. It's a window into a philosophy that says, say what works, push what spreads, and let the truth figure itself out later or not at all. We really don't give a shit. That may win an algorithm and may win you mad money through that revenue stream, but it doesn't survive scrutiny. And in the real world, the adult world, the one that exists outside of comment sections, like I mentioned earlier, and monetized outrage, evidence still wins. You know, you're only prolonging the inevitable and literally damaging anything concerning you about the future.
You did this horrible thing.
I know, I told the truth.
You told the truth.
Oh,
and
gosh.
the rule number one on the internet, if you want to survive, is to never tell the truth. You did this horrible thing.
I know, I told the truth.
You told the truth.
Oh,
and
gosh.
the rule number one on the internet, if you want to survive, is to never tell the truth.
There's a word that gets used in conversation so casually, so effortlessly, that most people don't even notice when it's doing the heaviest lifting in the room. That word is obviously. How many times have you heard Candace Owens use this word? And it's purposely done. Because when you say obviously, you're telling the person that's listening to you that this is something they should know. This is common knowledge, man. You'd be stupid if you didn't know this, right? Whether it's true or not. So you say, obviously, obviously, like, you'd have to be an idiot not to believe that. But the moment you start paying attention to it, really paying attention, you begin to see something most people miss. Obviously is not always a statement of fact. More often than not, it's a substitute for evidence. And that's what Candace does. Because when someone says obviously, what they are really doing is attempting to bypass your critical thinking. And that don't happen with us factivists, does it? They are trying to take a conclusion, one that may or may not be proven, and present it as self-evident. So beyond dispute that questioning it makes you look unreasonable, right? The technique has a name. It's called an appeal to obviousness. Have you ever heard of this? It's called an appeal to obviousness. And it sits right alongside things like begging the question and assertion framing. Assertion framing is a good way to put it. It's a rhetorical shortcut where the speaker smuggles in an unproven claim and labels it as something everyone already agrees on, right? You see Candace use this technique all the time. She'll say something, blah, 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 obviously, you know, or she loves to use we know, we all see it. We all see it. We know. That's another way of doing the same thing that, oh, well, everybody else sees it that way, so I'd be an idiot if I didn't too, right? But that's not proof. It's persuasion. And when you see it used repeatedly, when someone leans on obviously like a crutch, that's not confidence, that's compensation. Because if something is truly obvious, you don't need to say it because it's obvious. You demonstrate it. Now let's connect that to what you're about to see in this clip. Okay. With, my boy Tucker Carlson here. When someone strings together claims and punctuates them with obviously, they are constructing a narrative where the conclusion is treated as established fact, without doing the work required to actually establish it. And this is where people get fooled. Not because they're stupid. I mean, a lot of them are, but that's not always the case, but because the brain is wired for efficiency. If something is presented as already agreed upon, most people don't stop to interrogate it. They accept it, move forward, and build additional beliefs on top of it. This is how misinformation scales, kids. Not through overwhelming evidence, but through confident delivery of unproven assumptions. And nobody can deny that Tucker, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens are very confident in what they say. They say things with conviction. That doesn't make them right. So we take this a step further because this is where it gets uncomfortable for some people. Compare that technique across personalities. We know Candace Owens does it, obviously. So let's take Tucker Carlson. Does he do it too? You know, let's watch this clip of Tucker Carlson because he doesn't always assert things directly. He often frames them as questions, implications, or obvious conclusions that just happen to align with a broader narrative. It's not always here's the proof. It's you can see what's happening. It's obvious what this means, or any reasonable person would conclude. That's not accidental. That is a psychological communication strategy. It allows the speaker to plant an idea in your mind while maintaining plausible deniability. If challenged, they can say, I was just asking questions, but the audience has already internalized the implication. Now bring that over to Candace Owens. The difference isn't in the existence of the technique. It is the intensity and frequency. Where Tucker often dances around implication, Candace tends to lead into assertion. The claims are bolder, the conclusions are louder, and when obviously gets inserted into that style, it becomes even more powerful. Because now the audience isn't just being guided, they're being told. This is settled, this is clear, this is beyond debate. But here's the problem. When obviously replaces evidence, reality starts to drift. Because the audience begins accepting conclusions without demanding proof. And once that habit forms, it doesn't stay contained to one topic, it spreads. Now everything becomes obvious. Every theory, every suspicion, every narrative. No verification required. And that is how conspiracy thinking takes root. Not always through wild claims at first, but through a gradual lowering of evidentiary standards, right? You wean them down. It starts with, well, obviously that doesn't make sense. Then it becomes, obviously they're hiding something. And then eventually lands at, obviously the entire system is corrupt. Do you see the progression? Each step feels justified in the moment. Each step feels reasonable, but none of it is anchored in verifiable empirical evidence. It's anchored in assertion that feels true. And that distinction between what feels true and what can be proven is the line that separates critical thinkers from narrative consumers. Because there's two audiences out there. There's my audience, which is the critical thinkers. There is the Candace Tucker audience. They're the narrative consumers. Now, here's where we bring all this home. Using the word obviously, frequently, it doesn't actually make someone a liar. So let's be precise. But it can be a linguistic tell, a signal that the speaker is attempting to elevate a claim beyond scrutiny without actually supporting it. And so it's a red flag. It's not necessarily a proof of deception, but it's an invitation to look for that proof. Because in the real world, the adult world, the one, covered by evidence and not engagement, nothing important is obvious without demonstration. Nothing serious is accepted without verification. And nobody who respects the truth relies on a single word to carry an entire argument. So the next time you hear someone say obviously, don't nod. Just pause. Ask yourself, well, what evidence made that obvious? Because if the answer is none, which in most cases it will be, then what you're hearing isn't the truth. It's confidence performing as truth. And those things are not the same. It's not even close.
It's my personal belief, based on a fair amount of evidence, that they're not aliens. They've always been here. And I do think it's spiritual.
Can you articulate it?
The belief that supernatural beings take physical form. They all believe that. The Greek myths, Jesus, most famously, but that they take physical form, that they're not just like some ethereal, they're not just shadows floating around, specters, fog, that they're physical, like they're as real as the arm of your chair, and that they reproduce with people. Again, Christianity believes that. Jesus, Immaculate Conception, Spirit reproduces with human woman. That's what the story is.
Yeah, no, I was on February 20th, 2023. I was attacked in my bed by a spiritual being.
Physically mauled. In a spiritual attack by a demon? Yeah, by a demon.
And so I talked to a lot of people, and I was really shocked by what credible people told me. The U.S. government has, in fact, had direct contact with these beings, whatever they are. I've already told you what I think they are, and has entered into some sort of agreement with them. They could all be wrong. Of course, I can't prove it.
Yeah.
But I became completely satisfied, I'll say that they were not lying and that they were right or in the vicinity of right.
I care about this country and what happened to it after 1945. And it's a very clear demarcation line, and it seems obvious to me that nuclear weapons are demonic. There's no upside to them at all, and that anyone who claims otherwise is either ignorant or doing the bidding of the forces that created nuclear technology in the first place, which are not human forces, obviously.
These phenomena, which are clearly, obviously real. I mean, there's no debate about that. There's a lot of shit that people can't explain in the sky and underwater. We know that. Fact. So the debate is this government technology, is it from outer space, or is it some spiritual realm here?
I've never met a person who can isolate the moment where nuclear technology became known to man. And so where did it come from exactly? Oh, German scientists in the 30s. Really, when? Name the date. And I've never heard anybody do that. It's very clear to me that these are demonic.
And so people with this weird and destructive instinct, that's what it is. It's not a conspiracy, it's an instinct, have taken over all the levers of power. And I think it's like a spiritual force. That's my personal view. I can't prove it, but I really believe it.
Our leadership is the worst. Yeah, they're the worst. They're like the worst people I've ever met. Mm. And maybe that's not accidental.
Yeah, I mean, could it be, I'll just raise the question, could it be that some people have received some assistance from demonic
certainly seems that way.
In terms of achieving what they've achieved.
How many happy I don't know how many political leaders you know, but how many happy ones have you met?
Oh, gosh. Not a lot I trust, put it that way.
Right, but they're all like tormented. Yeah. Sweaty and nervous and afraid. Don't you think those are signs?
I do.
The main effort that the U.S. government has put into its disinformation, its lying on this topic, their main interest is in convincing you that the supernatural is not real. Why has that been so important for 80 years? for you to convince me the supernatural is not real? The obvious answer is, well, because they sort of know they're working for supernatural forces, actually. And I think that's probably true. I'm satisfied that I know enough, and I don't really want to know that much more. Because what I think I know is, this doesn't help me at all to know that. So that's a conclusion I've reached. I'm usually pretty curious. I've stopped being curious about this because I don't want to know anymore. But
you truly don't want to know anymore about it.
I think I know. I think I know what's up.
So with that being said, guys, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me again this morning. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. Easter tomorrow, we can we can celebrate our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I want everybody to have just a great weekend, a good time with family. Remember what's important out there. It isn't this, it isn't the internet. It's each other, man. It's each other, because it all starts with us connecting and communicating and talking things out. And, I'm really happy I'm able to squeeze in these lives now. It's burning that candle down. But man, I'm doing it. But I want to thank you guys. And I know it gets hectic, and I've got things coming at me from all angles. And I said it yesterday. I'm trying to respond to everybody. I know some of you are getting irritated with me, and some of you like the direction I'm going with this. Some of you don't. But I can't please everybody. So all I'm ever going to promise you is that I will be myself. That's it. Come what may. That's as honest as I can be. Have a great day, my friends. God bless. Please leave your comments. Again, you can help this Gen X cowboy out by subscribing to my page here on Facebook. It's like 99 cents a month, something like that, but every little bit helps. You guys can go grab my new book, The Blue Playbook Conservative, which of course calls out these grifters and what you can do to stop it from happening to you. All kinds of good stuff in that book, in my opinion. I happen to know the guy who wrote it. I mean, he's all right. He's a little annoying at times. He loves the 80s. Like, let me tell you, this guy. Have a great day, guys. Thank you again. God bless.